Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are on the globe. We're back, Paul and Stan. Hello. If you haven't seen us before, we have a website called the Zeta Connection. You can go there and find out all about us, what we do, about our connection to the Zeta race, about how we've evidenced our connection, testimonials, etc., etc. The website address is normally down below, and hopefully it is, but if it isn't, it's, what is it? the-zeta-connection.com. And at some point, we'll write it in the text box, which is over there, not there, because our screen is back to front. Anyway, we're here today to pass on some information about the Arcturian race. Now, for those that do know us, you know that we generally talk about the Zeta perspective on everything. And we will be giving you the Zeta perspective, but just this time on the Arcturians. So where do we want to begin with that?
Well, I think we need to start talking about
the
fact that we've evidenced one specific race.
How can we rely on the information we've been given?
So I spent years evidencing the Zetas, in trance states. That's not evidence. The evidence must be that when the communicator is speaking, that if they say that they're going to do something, that they actually do it. Now, we asked that the Zetas actually come in craft and land, and they did. And they came out and walked around. So when they were then uncloaking and showing themselves in the house, we also knew that it was them that was doing it and that they weren't a projection from another race.
Yep.
And the reason is because the beings that landed in the craft and have come multiple times were the same beings that then materialized in the house.
Yeah.
When we then encounter other races, such as the Anunnaki, the Anorians, the Ansera, the Collectors, whoever, doesn't matter who they are, the Arcturians, we're going to apply the same level of evidential process to them so that we can at least try in some way to clarify who they say they are, because there's so many other races that are out there that are pretending to be something that they're not.
Yeah. And
rather than just go down that rabbit hole and waste your time with that race, we would prefer to spend a year or two evidencing the race, which we're not finished doing yet with the Arcturians, but they're quite happy to, well, they've said they're quite happy to be evidenced. Yeah. So we'll definitely be asking them to evidence themselves in any way that they can. Yeah. They've done that a few times so far. The Zetas also said to us in the beginning that we were not to actually speak for other races because unless you've got good, clear evidence with a race, the problem is that a lot of, especially you're getting it through channeled information or altered states or trance communication, the problem is that the mind can also distort the stream of information that you're getting. That's really a common process for mediums. Silver Birch talked about that in a wonderfully written article called The Problems of Communication. And so quite often when a medium is in trance or deep trance and is speaking for the spirit person, the spirit will be taken away with the onrush of the thoughts of the medium, and the guides lose control of the process. The same thing applies with trance communication or channeled information. A lot of it's distorted in ways, and it doesn't have to be negative, it just can be overemphasized or other extraneous information put in that the beings would prefer that wasn't there. It's up to the individual about how they evidence that information for themselves.
Yeah, I guess for us working, you've always worked with a few other races, haven't you? But the Arcturian beings, they came to us through point of origin work that we do with people. That's how it really began. And so we work with people generally individually, and to determine where they came from before they were born, understanding that some people are hybrid consciousness. So some people are part extraterrestrial, some people are part spirit consciousness. They form together and create hybrid consciousness people. And so we work with those people with the Zetas, determining where they've actually come from other than spirit realm. And we had a run of Arcturian hybrids, which was really interesting because we hadn't really we'd had one or two before, but we seemed to have this stream of Arcturians. And so what happened was we started collecting quite a lot of information about them that was being passed through the Zeta that we work with. So we absolutely 100% trust what they tell us for so many different reasons. We trust what they tell us, and they've proved themselves to us generally on a daily basis. They evidence themselves in various ways. Yeah. And so, with this collection of information, we've been meaning for a while, I guess, haven't we, to do something with it. And then when one of the beings actually came to both of us, and then was able to speak through you, they said, they'd like that information out there. So we're very happy to.
So basically, we're just giving the information as we've got it. We're not. We're not experts on the Arcturian race, I don't believe. And
we don't have all the answers, far from all the answers. But we're happy to share what we know. And if we don't know, we'll say, we're not going to sit here and make stuff up. So, we've been collecting questions. So,
Overlander, and although Overlander, your comment isn't in caps, I'll still put it up. I've always seen reports of Arcturians having the big black eyes. The one I think had normal human type eyes. We've actually had contact with one Arcturian being, and they have big black eyes. Now that doesn't mean that other parts of their race don't. We're just saying for the being that we've interacted with.
And you've forgotten another one had sort of very dark blue crystal coloured eyes as well. Remember that one? Yeah. So we've had a couple of the beings there with different eye structure. But I guess shall we start with what they look like?
Yeah.
Right. So you're going
to show them some of the Polaroid that you took?
Oh, that's really funny.
On your iPhone 15 or?
No. So generally the way they're described is that they're tall, slender beings. Humanoid in the sense that they've got 2 arms and 2 legs. They're walking upright. They have hands and feet as we generally recognize them to look. They have blue skin. It's kind of like we've seen sort of a sky blue through to a darker blue, but it's always blue so far. Doesn't mean it always can be, I guess. And some have hair and some don't have hair. Some have tribal markings on their faces and on their arms, and others don't. So there's a bit of variety to what we've seen so far, but that's what they look like.
Yeah, absolutely.
And should we talk about how they've told us that they exist in terms of their dimensional aspect?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So this is really interesting. I'll talk about this,
and
then you can start with that horrendously long list of questions. So they describe to us that they exist within their own range of frequency, just like humans do. So humans are on this Earth. This Earth runs at what's the human frequency? 7.38 something about that. You can look it up. So the human resonance of the human frequency, and within that range, that's what we are, because we're on this planet. So when we talk to spirit people, that we know that they're in a different frequency range, that they exist on a different vibration, which is why we generally can't see them, or when we do, we see them as distortions or ghosts, transparent people, whatever. But to a spirit person in spirit realm, they perceive themselves to be 3D and solid, just like we do here. And think about, if you're an astral traveler, if you've astral traveled, you've projected out of body and you've looked down at your body, and maybe you've tried to touch your body, it's probably going to feel solid. A lot of astral travelers report that. I know you certainly talk about that, don't you?
If you're in the astral, you can touch your hand.
But you're not in your body, so how is that possible? Well, it's possible because you're existing at that point within a different frequency range. So the Arcturians have told us that they too perceive themselves as solid 3D beings. However, their frequency range is not the same as here on Earth. And so we can't see, if they were to be here with us within their normal frequency range, we would not be able to see them. They have to lower their vibration or frequency down to be perceived by humans. So for instance, we know that they have craft, but they don't use them, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But if they brought one of their crafts into the Earth's atmosphere, they would need to adjust the frequency of the craft for that craft to be seen. So I hope that explanation makes sense. Does that make sense? Okay. We're just fiddling with the aircon because it's getting hot. Are you turning that on or off?
Oh, I don't know.
You don't know. Okay.
I'll turn it off.
Questions?
Well, no, the thing is
yeah,
that I just want to repeat something that we were told to say in regards to the three-dimensionality stuff. It says, and these are their words specifically, for the race, there is no three-dimensional form. Dimensional references are based on perception of a full nature. A physical form holds its shape that is classed as a 3D shape. It does not mean that we exist in matter. Your spirit people are a good representation of this. They believe themselves to be full. They hold volume. But from this physical reality, you then perceive form. Other races, the way they make their description is only because they seek to provide pictorial images to humans. And so that's what they've said about themselves.
And then the way they use their language, or the way they're using the human language to express their concepts is very different to the way the Zetas are using the human language to describe their concepts. And so we're having to learn how to interpret that and find the analogy so we can understand what it is they're trying to express to us. Can I just do a bit of housekeeping? If you have questions, please use caps lock, because we can't pick out just random comments that people might be making due to specific questions from the text, because it moves quite quickly. And also, we would love Lynn to be here, but she's not, for anyone that's wondering where Lynn is. Yeah, so this is our Zeta perspective on her rebellious ufology channel, if anybody's asking. Yeah. Okay. So the beginning of the very long list of questions. So how did we find out about this race? What were we doing? Yeah, well, I kind of covered that. So like we found out about them. We've got the information we have because of the point of origin work that we did. That's right. Yeah. All right. So what was this, a physical encounter with the Arcturian? Was this physical? Yeah. Was it a physical encounter? No. Well, they weren't physically here in their 3D form. No. Okay. But how did you see them? Well, you've seen them around the house. So they must be adjusting their frequency, their vibration level for you to have done that. Yeah. And so I was standing over there and realized there was somebody standing behind me, and turned around and they were just standing there looking at me. And I thought, okay, well, I know the difference between spirits and ET, and then they just basically disappeared. But it was exactly the same person that you've drawn. Cyan's actually drawn this person, but we won't be showing it. So the next question is, and what does the race look like to us or you? What do they look like? Well, again, there's a question from Jeff there. What do they look like? Well, I've described them. They're tall, they're slender, they're blue-skinned, they're humanoid, 2 arms, 2 legs. Some have hair, some don't have hair. Jeff Demers says, are their craft considered sentient beings? We don't have that information. But we shall ask at the next available opportunity. Yeah, we can definitely ask that question. All right. The Arcturians work with 12th dimensional races, and they're known as the Ansera, known to us by that name. What do you know about the Ansera? Well, the being that the Arcturian lady that we spoke to the other day said they work with many different races. But what do we know about the Ansera? Yeah. They live in some sort of parallel universe, that they can access this universe via a portal, that they have one of these Dyson spheres around their planet, that they are 3D beings. goodness, I can't remember too much about the Ansera.
They're very interesting looking beings, the Ansera.
Yeah, they are.
They look fairly metallic in some respects.
Yeah, and they're kind of able to override any other energy, which was interesting.
What societal structures do the Arcturians have? Are they community-based as what seems to be an organic environment? What do you know about them?
Yeah, so they've shown us one aspect of their lives on the planet that they perceive as full or in volume or 3D as we would understand it. And it was forested. There was a lot of plants. It was very organic looking. We didn't see any technology. It's a tribal based society, so they're living in tribal groups that come together. When I say tribal, they're not actually, they're incredibly peaceful. They're not warfaring at all, or even tribal in that respect, but they seem to hold some reference to it in the way that they organize their societal structure and in the way they determine the function of the beings or the roles that the beings perform. Like they have one of the higher self beings that we encountered through the point of origin work it's like making a nod to a defender of the village, although there was no defending to do. There was no war, there's no conflict, but a bit like the Anunnaki still retain their references to their various kings and houses, that they have. The Arcturians seem to do the same for their past. So I guess it's a historical reference that they keep. So yeah, they come together. They come together. We know they're shamanic very, very shamanic in the way that they
that's the way they
operate.
Represent themselves as shamanic. But some races actually are shaman or act as shamans. So the doctors, the medical profession, that would work within that frequency range, show themselves as an isolated group of shamanic practitioners.
And they seem that each of these tribal villages seem to would have their own shaman, I guess, who lives in isolation. But then what were the 12? You remember them? There was this group.
Yeah, they're the isolated group that I was just talking about.
They're the isolated.
So Overlander says the Dyson sphere is a very high-tech solution to a planet's longevity. I wonder if the moon is a type of Dyson sphere. Overlander, I got to see this Dyson sphere, and it was a significant piece of technology. The moon it's like chalk and cheese. There's just no comparison in regards to this thing. Yeah. Interesting. All right. So the next question is, what dimension are they in? Are they 3D?
Yeah, we've tried to explain that already, but let's take it back to basics.
Yeah.
The extraterrestrials that we work with now, whether it's the Arcturians and speaking with them, or obviously predominantly the Zetas, they don't really assign a dimension that they are working or operating in. They very much, the Zetas, for instance, will say they are, if forced to, if pressed, they will refer to themselves as 3D beings working within a multi-dimensional framework. Now, I would suggest that the Arcturians are definitely working within a multi-dimensional framework. But when we talk about humans, we're 3D beings also operating within a multi-dimensional framework to some degree. If you think about it, when we dream, when we consciously dream, when we consciously astral travel, we're not operating in our traditional 3D form or environment. In that case, we're actually we're operating in consciousness in some way. Now, we assume that we're 3D beings, but we know that spirit realm aren't 3D compared to us, but they perceive themselves as 3D, if we have to use that. So, where does 3D start and where does the end, I'm beginning to.
It's the problem is
it's beginning to appear very relative.
When
to
you
me.
talk about frameworks, it doesn't work.
It really doesn't work.
I'll give you an
anymore.
example. So somebody says that the Arcturians are fifth dimensional beings.
Well, from what perspective?
That's the issue. Prove it. So when we ask them, where are you from? They're like, well, what if we're actually not from any dimensional framework that you know about?
Yeah.
What if we're actually working with beings outside of dimensional frameworks in void structures, void being non-dimensional frameworks? So they started to take the conversation to the next level in regards to, forget about all these dimensional levels that the perception is that these things exist, and they probably do. Let's talk about things outside of those structures, because in the end, it doesn't matter what somebody says a being is, whether the Ansera or 12th dimension, or the Arcturians 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever. Nobody can prove it.
There's a question from Jeff. Catch it before it disappears.
Question from Jeff.
Yeah, based on this 3 business. So I actually asked this Arcturian lady. Was it yesterday or the day before? That's very same question. No, they're not. They are not from the planet Arcturus or whatever the planet is. I said, have they ever had an association with that planet? And she said, only because of humans seem to bring the 2 together. Do they have any association with that planet?
She specifically said, the question was, do you associate with Arcturus? And they said, we associate with it as you require us to.
Yeah.
When the medium sees us in origin work that we do with people, we provide a graphical representation for the medium's mind to give information. So that's them talking through look, it was a fairly interesting state that they had put me in. There's a lot to this. They were using a portal, and we actually had to, in some way, evidence that portal as well. It was causing the music to bend. We were playing music in the room, and the music was bending. But if the device was here, physically here, the music was physically over there. So it was playing in a different part of the room. And that was because they were saying the portal was bending the fabric in the room. And although the music was leaving the device here, it was then turning up inside the portal. I mean, we'd not experienced this before. It was very strange type behaviour. This is what I'm saying about we need to spend some time evidencing these beings and how they work, because if you go online and you read all the information, lots of lovely rhetoric and talking and conversation and things. But from my perspective and science perspective, we want to go, well, if this who they say they are, how can we evidence this? Can we get them to come in a way that they'll give us much better information as well? Yeah.
And, and that was a question I put to one of the Zetas this morning, how do these non-corporeal as we perceive them, because of course it's just frequency based, how do they evidence themselves? How do we work with that? Of course the Zetas brought a craft. They've been in the house. Other people see them in the house as
healings that are
3D walking, the healings. How can the Arcturians do the same? If we're going to start dedicating our time to working with them, we need them to prove who they are, because we're just wasting our time otherwise. And I asked the Zeta, can they materialize? Yes, if required. Can they do healings? Yes.
So we'll go about evidencing it that way.
We will. And, we will absolutely do that, because we'd be crazy not to.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
I'm not going to waste our time.
Yeah.
So do they have children? Yes.
Yeah, we've definitely seen them with children. Their lifespan, they've told us, is approximately 200 to 300 Earth years long. They don't have a afterlife process like like humans do. They don't have a spirit realm, but rather they use a process akin to the collective consciousness of the Zeta race. So maybe you want to explain what that actually means.
I can, but it's probably not going to be a very good explanation.
Okay.
That's the problem. It's more about
a couple of words.
It's more about they they move into the collective consciousness, and then they choose to incarnate as required. They don't have an oversoul process, whereas spirit realm uses the oversoul process and for anyone that's interested in that, you can look that up. Are they telepathic? Yes, absolutely. Do they hunt? No, it's symbolic, isn't it?
Symbolic. So again, like we saw a defender of the village type, we've seen a symbolic representation of function hunter. They no longer hunt, but for all intents and purposes, they appear like a hunter, but they're not.
Rather than this being a clinical exercise in Q&A, what's been your experience with this being?
Well, so far it's been their energy is amazing, very loving, very high vibration, very clear and light.
What about yesterday?
I'm trying to think of how can somebody who doesn't sit.
Yeah, but what about yesterday?
When
the portal happened, what happened then? What did you experience?
Oh God, I was experiencing all sorts. I wouldn't even know how to put that into words, to be honest. I don't even know how to express that.
Jeff says, where's the mouse?
There's the mouse.
They've got pineal glands, one in front, one in the heads, and one facing the rear. The difference is that they have what are classed as non-physical states.
Yeah.
So there's no requirement for any type of physicality or organs or pineal glands or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know.
We don't know, Jeff. I mean,
I'll ask.
We can ask about that, but I'm not sure why. If I was in the astral, if I was in the astral looking at my physical hands in the astral, they actually have no blood running through them, right? You can't cut them or anything.
It's a representation.
Yeah, it's just a representation of form, as the Arcturians said. So when they've talked about they've got this or they've got that, these could just be representations of things that they're talking about.
Yeah.
And this is the problem. We're coming out with this information, and people are going to be going, well, 5,000 people on the internet have all said that they've got lungs, and this being saying, well, we actually don't breathe, but it looks like we breathe in our dimensional space.
Yeah, just like it would to spirit realm people. And
let's face it, people look like they breathe as well, don't they? Just
look like it does to us, I guess, until we move out of form, and then we don't need to.
Yeah.
I think this stuff's a lot more complicated than people realize. This whole concept of being 3D is a real misnomer. What's the word? It's really misleading.
Yeah.
When you start separating existence into dimensions, it's really, really misleading and can lead your mind into the wrong areas. Like why do we even bother talking about existing as three-dimensional bodies of people? Existence is moving into a 4D or 5D with the ascension process if we understand we're living in a holographic environment in the first place. Like, why do we even bother referring to a 3D existence? 3D makes absolutely no sense.
Actually, it's probably.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, it's the dimension that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
that's right.
I think it's a really, it was a great way to maybe express things in the beginning when there was no concept at all in understanding these things. But as we've moved forward in our knowledge, as we progress as a race and learn more about what we can and can't do as humans right now, like spirit realm communication, extraterrestrial communication, and out-of-body projections, and all of this, the whole concept of these dimensional boxes is obsolete. And I'll say that's absolutely obsolete now. In fact, it's actually just blown my brain just thinking about it.
Yeah,
I need a cup of tea.
It says here, if they can speak, it would make sense to have some air reservoirs to move past vocal cords, even if they weren't for oxygenation. But they're telepathic.
Yeah.
So when spirit people, we'll give you an example. So spirit people don't breathe at all because they don't need to. But when they work through trance mediums and they speak, they need to provide a representation of breath work.
Otherwise,
so that
the medium
they can use the vocal
breathe.
cords. But then if we extend that out to independent direct voice, where the ectoplasm from the medium is taken and extruded outside of the medium's body, and then they project and create a voice box in the ectoplasm, they then have to create a vibrational structure that is not based on breathing, because they've got to be able to create vocal patterns inside the voice box.
Yeah.
You see?
And that's all done external,
consciously,
to the body
through telepathy.
Yeah.
It's really, when you start looking into this stuff and really start looking into it,
when you pick it apart,
it's so interesting. Always be skeptical, because the more skeptical you are, the more questions you ask and the more you learn. And the more, if somebody's communicating through somebody, the Zetas get asked thousands of questions through myself. As you know, we've got the primer of the Zeta race, the Zeta interviews, Inside the Hive Mind, Zeta Contact, all these books. There were thousands and thousands of questions asked to the Zetas. And I loved it because I knew that I didn't know the answers. And I knew that the Zetas were going to have to give the answers for themselves and step up. Talking about things like the new implants that are out, and how that technology works. All these very, very interesting new topics that have come up. So where are we actually up to on this list? Do they have art?
Well, technology. Let's start with that.
Where's that one?
It's that there.
Oh, do they use technology?
Yeah.
There you go.
They try not to. So, okay. Do you want to answer that?
No, you can answer.
I'll do it. Okay. So they've told us multiple times that yes, they do have technology, but they really, really don't like to use it. They see it as an interference, and it takes away from what they can do. These guys are absolute masters of consciousness. So apparently it's isolated. It's kept isolated away from them, and that they exist very happily without it.
Do you think that's because they are very consciously aware of their spirituality and their spiritual nature, because they're vibrating at a frequency that means that any technology that they have isn't a three-dimensional technology. It's actually technology based in, say, a five-dimensional space. It's a different type of technology. And so they keep their technology away from them because they don't want to be influenced by it. Whereas in the three-dimensional space, we have our technology all around us, and we are influenced by it.
Yeah, always. And that would ring true for, they've said, like we mentioned earlier, they do have craft, but they only use them when they absolutely need to.
Yeah. That was interesting how they answered that.
Because they don't need to.
Because they said the answer to them was, do you have craft? They said, the question was, do they have craft and can they materialize? And they said yes. Just as the Zetas have craft and dematerialize to move through space, time, whatever, they said we do the opposite process. We move down in frequency, and then we can materialize. I would add in that they would probably materialize using fine matter, which is what the Zetas talk about. The apportation process, when they through quanta, they create and apport the spirit people. They then populate that level of consciousness with matter, and that then becomes a physical item in the three-dimensional space.
I've seen that happen,
and we've seen that happen with our own eyes multiple times. So has William Trinite, who's in the room as well. He's also seen apports materialize through mediums
out of absolute nothingness.
And William and I were in the same room together when it happened, and it was quite interesting watching the medium put their hand up, and there was a light, and then the apport just fell down That was very interesting. Yes, they have craft, they have an afterlife process. Do they have art? Now, you being the artist will be able to give a full explanation of this, I'm guessing.
I haven't asked them. I don't think I've asked them about art.
Really? What about the way they look?
Well, the way they look is very tribal. They do body paint. Actually, whether it's body paint or some sort of permanent marking, I don't know, haven't clarified. But we've seen them with like symbols on their arms, on their foreheads, like tribal markings on their face. I've seen them with jewelry. Yeah. So I guess that's art.
But of course, they did say that was a representation of themselves in the three-dimensional space.
So we'll have to. I mean, oh my God, there's so much more we have to get clarified.
Well, the one is, do they paint themselves?
Well, we know that they do. Well, when they're representing themselves in 3D form, that they appear to be painted. But how that translates to a 3D existence, I don't know.
All right. How do they heal? How do the Arcturians heal?
Well, their healing methods are generally, they've said, through light, sound, and through plant materials. One of the
Sirius A races does the same.
One of the Sirius A races uses organic matter.
Yeah, organic matter.
But with the sound, when we had that information given to us, that was brilliant. That was actually in a very small point of origin group sitting that we did in Sydney several years ago, and one of the ladies that had come along was Arcturian, and I believe they were a healer, and they were a sound healer.
Yeah.
And that was what was represented. That was what was given to
them.
them.
They were using tuning forks, I believe.
And that's right. And so they had this long conversation about healing in the sitting. So afterwards, after the sitting had finished, she actually disclosed to us that she was a healer and she worked with sound via tuning fork. So we had no idea. We'd not met her before. And that's like, brilliant.
Yeah, it's good. See, even those small bits of evidence are very interesting.
Evidential for the person receiving
so when
the
being
information.
Speaking to somebody, if they then say to that person, "Oh, well, we heal with sound, and so do you," they have never met that person before, but they know about them, and then that person then discloses they've got tuning forks in their back pocket. Well, I mean, that's a pretty good level of evidence there.
Good.
So, how do they visit their own? How do they visit hybrids?
Through consciousness.
Through consciousness.
Yeah, they don't visit with craft. They visit via consciousness processes.
Do some of these Arcturian people have symbols on their face?
Yeah, like we've said,
they do.
We've seen them on the forehead. We've seen the markings on the face and the arms. Yeah.
Yeah. What are the similarities between the Arcturian shamans and the Native American shamans on Earth?
We don't know.
We don't have enough information to answer that question at this point. It's definitely an area that I'm interested in. I know that some of the shaman that we've met and some of the spirit shaman that we've met, definitely it's their belief structure that then helps them to get a representation from spirit people to them. So we wouldn't know at this point about the Arcturian shaman. Although we've been allowed to go in and see them working, when I'm not sure actually how they work. So that's probably the next adventure with them. That'll be quite an interesting thing to see. Do they have a religion or spiritual non-religious beings?
One of the higher self beings that spoke to us described them as themselves as a teacher of consciousness to the children. So that was their function, that was their role. In terms of religion, no, they don't have religion in the way that humans have religion. But they,
thankfully.
Thank God, yeah. Thank God.
That's so funny you said that.
But that's hilarious. But they do, I can't remember her exact words. They believe in light.
Hang on, I may have actually documented
you have
that.
documented that.
They
work with light as a higher. They perceive that to be a higher state of existence, and that they work within that light, or they aim to work within that light framework.
The interesting thing was, and I for some reason don't have it documented here, but they had a framework that they used to describe their spiritual nature, and it wasn't based around anything I'd ever heard before.
No.
So maybe we'll have to
maybe we can do a blog
give that
post
another time, or a blog post on our website. I intend to put information up on the website as a blog post.
Yeah, we'll type out her exact words and put them up there for people to.
Plus, there's also a Reddit group called the Arcturians, or the Arcturians, where I've been posting in there as well. So it's definitely interesting times. Do they eat and sleep?
I don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
There you go. We don't know.
We'll find out.
Do they have a leader or a hierarchical structure?
Certainly their shamanic practices seem to hold a structure, in that there seems to be a higher council or body of 12 that seem to have some sort of overview process, but we don't understand it fully yet. Yeah,
I mean, there's so many good questions, and I mean, it's easy just to go, well, yeah, okay, they've got a hierarchical structure. Yeah, well, what does that actually look like? Well, I mean, how does it work? What does this society work like? Because without knowing all the background information, you've only got a small piece of the puzzle. I'll give you an example. An extraterrestrial comes up to you and asks you to describe or explain the human race. Because you're part of the human race, you probably do a pretty good job discussing the human race. We want that information from these other races. We would like to get that information and post it. They've asked that any information we get, that we make it available to everybody on our website. So we'll be doing that as well. All right. And coming up to the last few questions, so if there's no questions from here, we'll be finishing in about 5 minutes. How many groups or races of the Arcturians are there?
I don't know.
We don't know that question either.
Don't know
the answer. What is the primary way that they communicate is telepathy?
Yeah.
And in general, what are the different functions of the Arcturians? That is a very interesting question, because to actually answer that question, we'll have to have a full knowledge of the societal structures.
We know they have teachers. We know they have shamans. We know they have some form of
symbolic hunting processes.
Yeah, and we know they have some form of symbolic. I don't want to use the word military, because that's way over the top. Some sort of a defense role. I mean, the way their society has come across to us so far is it's very tribal in its nature, in the way that it appears.
Well, I would suggest that it's more community-based.
But yeah, based on community tribes, community groups that come together. Yeah, that's all we've seen so far.
It's only early days yet. We've only had probably a maximum of 40 minutes. We'll have to explain how this came about. There was just to answer Rebecca's, is there teachings in consciousness of oneness? It looks like that, but we could definitely ask them that question.
Definitely, they teach consciousness processes. What their focus is of that, we don't know.
So can you do a chronological order of how the Arcturians came about in our mediumship? We're doing a point of origin.
It started with the point of origin work.
Yeah, and
so
then
we had a couple of people that were Arcturian. Then we had then we had a string of Zetas. Then we had Sirius A. We had various other races that unknown names. We've had Celestials and we've had Interdimensionals. we had Palladian a little while
Yeah,
back.
we've got Palladian visitors as well.
Yeah.
But Palladians have been visiting for many years. So.
But they talk to you anyway. But yeah, so we've been slowly accumulating information. And then after we had a Arcturian hybrid about a month ago. And their higher self beings, the interaction there seemed to stimulate a contact with the race. And since then, we've had a number of visits from the race. That's where we're at. So
right, but how did you see the image? Why did you see the image that you drew? Because, Simon's an artist, so she's drawn them.
Yeah, well, the day after we did someone's point of origin, a being came, a female Arcturian came, and their energy, I recognized their energy from the day before, or the Arcturian energy from the day before, and I had to draw them. It became compulsive. They were with me. I could see them, absolutely see them crystal clear. And like it gets with me, if I don't, until I've got the image down on canvas, paper, whatever, it does not leave. So the house kind of turned upside down during that time. And then we had the image, and every time we walked past this image, we knew it had their energy embedded into it, and it was just like poof, and then that's it. It seemed to stimulate this connection.
Here's the answer to that question about do you have a religion or a structure?
Oh, you found it. Good.
They say we believe in light, the pure nature of ascension, the mind, the non-undulating form of silent existence. This is a higher state of existence.
There you go.
That's what they said.
So words.
Their words. Rebecca says, I was told that they're guardians. What we've experienced so far is we're still in the evidential stage. So when a being comes to you, and you know that we teach trance mediumship and extraterrestrial contact, the first few times that they come, you have to ask them to step away. They can stay for a couple of minutes, but then you have to ask them to step away.
Yeah.
When a being then complies with your request, and then you come back down to your grounded state, you then know that the being will generally, if asked, leave. Remembering that the first time that they come, the energy may not be at its fullest potential. It might only be at 10%. As the being moves in closer and closer, the energy exponentially will increase and amplify. And at some point, you may be asking them to leave because they need to leave for yourself. And you have to know that they're leaving. So when we are going through the evidential process, which actually takes a couple of years for us to do this. We are not those people that just, I've got this being working with me. How did you evidence them? Oh, well, I don't care about that.
Or the energy felt really strong.
It felt okay, so I'm just going to use that. No, we've got so many beings that try to come into our space. We say to them, if you want to come into our space, you need to evidence yourself correctly. And so we don't get a lot of the interlopers coming because they know that they're going to have to spend 2 years. And they're not going to waste their time doing that. Not when they can just embed technology in anybody when they can do that. So
that all comes back down to evidencing your communicators, the beings that are trying to communicate with you. And as Paul said, we teach that. I spoke to the Zetas this morning, like how do we evidence these non-corporeal beings? Well, even these non-corporeal beings in the Arcturians have the capacity to materialize. They have the capacity to heal. And so if you are a medium and you have learned the difference between your own energy and the energy that comes to you as an external consciousness, and you've learned to feel into that energy and experience personality and intention by the frequency that energy gives off, that's a good start point for this work. If you don't know the difference between your energy and somebody else's, you've got no way to even begin to try and evidence anything. And if you haven't spent time working with spirits, which are the easiest form of external energies to us to work with, maybe through clairvoyant mediumship, where you do start to feel their personality and be able to evidence the information that you're getting from them, because of course it's an evidential process. You know, somebody's nan comes to you, you're not just feeling like you've got their nan, and you're not just describing what their nan looked like and how they felt and all the things that they like to do. You're actually able to then give information about various events or things that have happened to that nan that person can verify for you, to prove that it's you're actually hearing that information, and it's not just your subconscious mind then putting words to the feeling. So, you know,
I think people underestimate mental mediumship.
God, yeah.
You see, clairvoyance is seen as being something that you just use to work with spirits, so that's fine. But with clairvoyance, if a spirit person comes, they can give a lot of evidence that can be validated by a third party. If it was your grandmother and, you know, she comes through a medium, the medium can give the information, you know whether it's your grandmother or not. Utilising those abilities, that level of evidential training that you give yourself as a medium, you can then translate that over to extraterrestrial contact. Not in a way where someone's going to go, well, I can evidence that ET because, you know, whatever. But you'll be able to do it through understanding energy, understanding the difference between your energy and theirs. When you ask them questions, you can be clear and concise about the questions you ask them. And the information isn't just random information that comes through. You know, if we want random information, we'll just listen to anybody channeling, basically. Yeah.
And I think, you know, one of the biggest mistakes people make in their early days of their mediumship training is they mistake a strong, intense energy for a positive energy. Just because an energy feels strong, different, external, and, you know, immense, doesn't necessarily mean that's a positive thing.
Yeah, that's right.
So
and amplitude of energy is no indication of the intention of the energy.
That's right.
It's like playing a radio at full blast.
Oh, it's really loud.
It's just
great.
really loud.
I can hear it.
Doesn't mean that it's good.
You know, So.
Jeff Demis says, is their energy harmful to us as some energy beings are? Jeff, I'm wondering if you're talking about, say, you're walking in a craft and the frequency of the craft then damages the cellular structure of the human. I would suggest that the damage that can come to a human is through the three-dimensional space, the construct of the mind. It's not that you'll be burnt or made unwell. It's that the capacity to lose yourself in the process. And that's absolutely underestimated by so many people, that they actually get lost in the communication process, in the telepathic process. Over the time that they do it, they no longer understand who they are. They start to become different in a way where they may lose their capacity to sit in a three-dimensional framework. It's very important to ground and clear after each of these contacts. Is that a question there? Hang on, it's in caps. Yes, to their knowledge of consciousness, this is what they showed me, the void, the oneness. Yes, that's good. That's good. All right. So if there's no more questions, that is our time. And it's been enjoyable. We'll only do these Arcturian ones as we have enough information. So it could be a few months before we do another one with the Arcturians. It's up to them when they want to come. They have to basically stand in line with all of the other races, whether the Anunnaki come or spirit people come or the Palladians or the Zetas or whatever. And all of them are having to go through the same evidential process. All of them each time. All right. So if you take away anything from today, it's about learn about your own energy, understand the difference between your energy and another being's. Don't take everything for granted and be skeptical.
Evidence your own contact.
All righty. And work towards evidencing your contact in a way which you can easily do if you start to think about the questions that you can ask them. All righty. Well, that's okay. So we're off now. Okay. Lovely seeing you all. And bye.
See you soon.